following program contains disturbing materials that may not be suitable for some resellers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Negative feedback, even neutral feedback, nobody likes it, right? And I know it's been a sticking point for a lot of you guys. Heck, it even bothers me. Let's just be real about it. I mean, we're proud about the business that we put together. I mean, call it a business, but it's a business that we put together. And we like to think that we treat customers right, we deliver on a good product, and we follow through with the things that we're supposed to do. Yet here comes a buyer that doesn't reach out, doesn't quite understand what's going on. And next thing you know, boom, here's a negative feedback. And for many, many months, it's been a very frustrating ordeal with eBay because you point to obvious removal situations and you get denied, right? Whether you call in or use the tool. And today I'm going to kind of discuss this with you. I know that Rockstar Flipper did come out with a video, kind of touching, like an 8-minute video, kind of touching on it, reading through the message that eBay sent. And I plan on doing that as well. But I just kind of want to go into a deeper discussion about what does it mean? I mean, why does eBay put out correspondence if they aren't going to change their ways? Now, generally, a lot of times we get frustrated at eBay. We see the things that they do. They never acknowledge it and they never change their ways. So I'm very encouraged that eBay is acknowledging that there is a problem. And of course, it took a lot of feedback from you guys, I'm sure, in a lot of the forums and just on videos. eBay watches these videos. They read seller forums, and I believe after a while, they finally got it. You know, one eBay employee then passes the message on that there's problems to other employees, and it gets up the chain to corporate, and corporate decides to fix the problem. Now, let's hope that they're going to fix the problem. Now, I am on my account, my Value Trends account. I'm going to scroll down to, where did it go? Here it is. The seller check-in feedback update. Now, as I mentioned, Rockstar Flipper came out with a video yesterday kind of touching on this, but to his credit, Joe, Crazy New York Driver, mentioned this like the day after the seller check-in. And this is from the seller check-in update, okay? So this is what was announced. Now, goes in to say a more fair experience for sellers and buyers. Over the last year, it became increasingly clear that our feedback removal policies had become more and more arbitrary, which was creating inconsistent and sometimes unfair experiences for both sellers and buyers. In response, we began work to create a more streamlined and consistent process for sellers to ask for feedback removals that was grounded in policy. Now, remember that, grounded in policy, and didn't depend on who, how, or when you ask for feedback removed. However, if these changes were put into action, they exposed gaps in our underlying policies so that some feedback removal requests were rejected in situations where you deserved to be protected. So they're acknowledging that there's been many issues where this has been a problem. And I kind of wonder, and I doubt this is going to happen, I'm wondering, though, if there's a way that eBay is willing to go back. So, acknowledging that they screwed up, will they go back and allow feedback to be removed beyond the 60-day period? I doubt it, but it's worth mentioning. We take responsibility for the gaps and for not fixing them before we made changes to the removal process. Since this spring, we've been working to update the policy. Again, they're acknowledging they're taking responsibility. What does that mean? If they're not going to take action and fix the feedback that has been denied from, say, the beginning of the year, right? They can't go back more than 90 days. And really, I think the start here should be to go back and maybe just wipe out negative feedbacks from like 2-3 months ago. That would be, I think that would be maybe a good start to, undo the problem that they're taking responsibility for. Now it says new changes to our feedback policies. We're glad to announce that more than a dozen feedback policy changes have now taken effect on eBay. So it says more than a dozen. Now it doesn't go in to say what the dozen are, but it does go into one, I believe. But As we go forward, we'll be adding more cases where feedback removal is warranted. For just one example, so now there's more than a dozen. This is just one of them. We will remove feedback when a seller denies a buyer's cancellation request because per eBay policy, a seller has discretion to accept or deny a cancellation request. So that buyer agrees to buy your item, right? And they want to cancel under by mistake, but we know there's more than one click that goes into that buying by mistake. And it's up to each and every seller how far they want to take the idea that it is a binding contract between buyer and seller. I'm not here to tell you you're right or wrong. That's a decision only you have to make. But the idea that a buyer now wants to lash out at you because maybe you've already dropped off the package with the carrier, right? It's out of your hands, or you just simply decided to, go through with the transaction because it is what? A request, right? It's not a demand. It's not something that you're required to follow through with. It doesn't even matter how I feel about it. It's simply a request. And so you should not be, because eBay is giving you the opportunity to either approve or deny the request, you shouldn't have any backlash for the decision you're making, right? Otherwise, it should be, this is no longer a request. This is what we're just going to say. It's canceled. So because of that, that's one example where they're going to remove negative feedback from somebody who just wants to cancel, right? And you denied the cancellation. Now, I want to go to show you something here. If we go back to help and contact, so be your top up here at the top, and you click on help and contact. Now, it'll say, how can we help you today? You go down to request to remove feedback. Okay. Now, I don't have any feedback issues in the last 30 days, but I think I can go back in the last 6 months. And I had an issue where the radiator has several dents. Was it dropped? This was not in the item description. Radiator seems to work okay. Hope it's safe to use. Now, this is a DeLonghi Dragon digital oil-filled radiator. I can tell you that this particular one, I did mention there's like a dent in the side of it. And I did mention in the listing that was the case. Now, I guess I could go in and say, look, now maybe this is one of the dozen that they're adding, right? But maybe I can go in and say buyers asking for more than what was advertised in the listing. So I can go in here to request to remove, because you see the ones below it says older than 90 days can't be removed. So I'm going to go in and request to remove. And I didn't bother doing this when I got it, because honestly, I'm like, okay, at the time I got the feedback, I was thinking, well, maybe it was one of those things where it was dropped by USPS, because we did Ground Advantage USPS. But I recall this particular unit was well packed in the factory styrofoam packaging. It would be one of those things where the box would have to be heavily damaged. And I'm sure that the buyer would have mentioned that, but they're saying it was me when this was actually part of the listing. So now I want you to pay attention to these different ones. Now, these have always been here, but if eBay is now going to focus more on approving removal for 12 different options or reasons, you would think that it would, of course, be the ones that they would already have in place here in their removal tool. So the first one is profane or inappropriate remarks. So profane, of course, we don't have to go and explain that. But inappropriate remarks would be maybe doxing you, putting your address in there, putting your name in there. Just something inappropriate there. Maybe making sexual remarks or any kind of remarks that one would deem inappropriate. Personal information included. Well, I guess that goes along with the first one I gave you. The next one is doesn't follow eBay policies. Now, this one here is big for me, because anytime that I would use this tool, 99% of the time, it's because the buyer failed to follow an eBay policy. For instance, maybe they're extorting you. Maybe, of course, manipulation, a little bit different than extortion. Manipulation is maybe not as forthcoming as saying, hey, just give me a partial, or I'm going to give you a negative feedback. So it doesn't follow eBay policies. Here's another one I rarely see related to a case that was resolved in my favor. Here's one that a lot of people get denied for. Other reason outside my control: weather disruptions causes your package to arrive late. Buyer leaves negative feedback because of it. You did everything you were supposed to do, but USPS didn't. Technical issues, buyer error. So in this case, I could make a case for buyer error. They did not read my description. Now, in the past, we would mark this, and I would hope you would write up a very detailed reason as to why you're selecting this box. But I think there's a couple reasons why people in the past, of course, eBay has been rubber stamping. We know that, right? They have the backroom group, or maybe even AI, going through these and rejecting them. That's what's been going on so far. But now they're going to be doing doing this manually and overseeing this process a little bit more. And I'm hopeful that it's going to be where we get these things removed. Now, one thing that we need to be doing is we need to be finding at least one of these options. Now, the buyer, the example that eBay gave, the buyer who left the feedback because the seller wouldn't cancel or accept the cancellation request, that's not here. That would probably follow under doesn't follow eBay policies, okay, more than anything else. So it really depends. They may expand this. If not, we just need to find the right reason. Once we find the right reason, you need to make sure there's 2,000. You see here at the bottom, there's 2,000 characters. That's a lot. Now, no one's asking you to write a novel, but 2,000 characters, you can actually say quite a bit about what happened. So in this particular case, and I'm not going to submit this one, I'm just going to leave it alone. But for this particular one, I would probably put doesn't follow eBay policies. And I would go in and state something to the effect of, buyer was complaining about a blemish that was already advertised in the listing. And per eBay policy, the buyer cannot ask for something that was not included as part of the sale. They cannot change the terms of the transaction. And to say that this was one that had a dent in it, but it's still in great shape, works great, and then they get it because they didn't read the listing, they're expecting brand new, and they see a ding in it, and unbeknownst to them, hey, this was supposed to be blemish free, but yet you sent me one that had a dent. And who's at fault? I mean, as sellers, we can only do so much. Add the photos and also add anything that's wrong with it in the listing. And if the buyer doesn't read it, I mean, part of it's on eBay. They don't make it, they're using the mobile app. They don't make it all that clear to get to or easy to get to your item description. But here I would simply just type that in. And, maybe I'll, after we're done with the video, I'm not going to go in through and type this in right now. But after I'm done with the video, maybe I'll go in and just do it to see what result I get now that eBay is changing the way they're handling this thing. So I thought I would make a video to kind of expound on what some people have actually spoken about on this issue. And I really think that it could have been made clearer. And hopefully by me showing you the feedback removal process, don't call eBay. Hopefully by showing it to you, you can do it on your own. And also, if they're changing their stance on this, we can get it taken out like within 8 to 12 hours is usually the time frame that eBay takes to give you some kind of answer on it. Now, I did talk to eBay, and I did call them and speak to a representative. And of course, I mean, what is that worth? But I mean, you're dealing with people that get these requests quite constantly. If you get denied on a feedback removal request, the way to do it is to contact eBay. Now, it's like pulling teeth. I know if you're not concierge, you got to go through the chat bot, and then strike up a conversation with the chat bot. And if you can get past the first request where it wants to send you to a policy, just state, let me speak to someone. And then it will tell you, let us call you, 1 to 2 minutes, approve the phone number. It calls you and someone will be on the line. At that point, what you're supposed to do is contact the dispute department, the dispute team, and or let them know, hey, this was denied and I want to dispute this outcome because this goes against your feedback removal policy. And that's the way I would handle it. Now, again, those who have concierge have an easier time than we do. We have to manipulate the system. Also, you can go through eBay for Business on Facebook and just state, hey, look, I submitted this to have it removed. This is in clear violation of this policy. Always point to the policy and state that I want to dispute this and this needs to be removed. Now, does that guarantee it's going to be removed? No, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be removed. But in light of what eBay's come out and admitted to, they're going to be a little bit less trigger happy when it comes to denied. And they might be more willing to remove feedback that makes sense. Now, let me say a couple things. If you receive a negative feedback from a buyer and it's like didn't have a good transaction, wasn't happy with what I bought, very cheap quality and whatever, right? eBay is going to allow that to stand because eBay, the way they look at it is the buyer's got to have an opportunity to at least state how they feel about how the transaction went down. And nothing that they stated there in that feedback was mentioned any of these things. Like, maybe there's a problem with the item. Like in my case, they are complaining about the dent that I had actually advertised, took less money because of the dent. Or maybe a seller wouldn't give me half of my money back. Well, that's against eBay policy. So if they leave feedback like that, then yeah, there you go. So they have to be violating the eBay policy either within the feedback or within the messages between you and the buyer. So if you have this dialogue with the buyer back and forth and it becomes one of those things where they're threatening you, but they leave a different type of feedback, I would go in and ask them to please make sure they read all the messages between buyer and seller to see where they had stated they were going to leave a negative feedback if you didn't do X, Y, and Z. Because some of these buyers are slick. They know they can say what they want and then leave a different kind of feedback, different wording than what they worded with you in the messages, and it's going to stick. So make sure that if you have any discussion with the buyer, you make mention of that and ask them to review the messages between buyer and seller. Now, let me just add that negative and neutral feedback, it's not the end of the world, guys. It's a temporary, like Joe, crazy New York driver, will say, well, I don't care what anyone says, it's going to hurt you. It doesn't hurt you that bad. It does. Is it? It's not optimal when for optics, people will, see what type of seller you are. You have enough of these red marks or neutral marks with derogatory remarks in them from different buyers. It does lead people who look at that kind of thing, like buyers like myself, and it does lead those buyers to think that there might be a problem. Think of it like this. Just as sellers are apprehensive about dealing with bad buyers, there's buyers that are very apprehensive out there about dealing with bad sellers. And anytime they see flags, and that's what negative feedback is, they're red flags that give you an idea of who you're dealing with. And warranted or not, buyers will see that, and that can affect their willingness to buy from you. They may just move on if they don't like what they see. But I do also believe there's anything that happens in a negative way to your account does have a detrimental effect in some small way on your account. Maybe a few hours, maybe you don't get as much traffic. Maybe eBay doesn't display your listings as frequently as they would have without the negative feedback. I mean, there's nothing that we can go into the algorithm. There's no way we can go in and say, oh yeah, here it is. It's a 6-hour rule. There's nothing like that. We can kind of only base this on previous instances where like myself on both of my accounts where I've received a negative feedback, and it just seems like things slow down. And when that happens enough, I mean, you kind of form your own conclusions. So that's what I think about that. I want to know what your thoughts are down below. Have you received a negative feedback recently, maybe even since this was put out a few days ago from eBay? Did you try to get it removed, and were you successful? Want to know that down below. Wanted to share with you guys, if you guys are so inclined to sort of humor me here, I have now 9 sales today. I had 11 yesterday. Now, I want you to see this. This is kind of crazy. You guys know I've been having a heck of a run here. 807, some 600 days, $700 days. I mean, really solid numbers. I only have 200 items in my store. Most of you know my story. But as we get into this last weekend, Father's Day weekend, you see Friday was okay, $454. I'm not going to complain about. Saturday was lower than normal, okay, but not too concerning. Okay, fine. I had an off day. Father's Day, $239. Now it's like, okay, Sundays are usually my better day of the week, but again, not panicking. Monday came, $135. I'm like, okay, something's up. Now, in addition to the fact that my sales weren't happening as frequently, the number of offers to send to watchers were greatly diminished. You can tell with your account that things just aren't right. Okay. And all the while, all those days, I'm sitting there pumping out listings. So I was under 200. I was at 210 at one point. And it was at this point on Tuesday, Tuesday came. Now, I'm not panicking. I mean, look, we had a downturn in sales. You see this chart. I haven't had a downturn like that in the last 30 days. So I'm like, okay, something's up here. Now, there is a thing. And of course, again, there's nowhere I can point to say there is a thing within eBay policies, procedures, or the algorithm. But humor me here. There have been times where I've seen something like this on my account. The last time being when my account was erroneously suspended for 3 days. And then after showing eBay the error of their ways, after a day, they lifted the suspension, but my sales didn't come back. And I was like, I'm not waiting until when eBay decides that I'm a good boy now and give me traffic again. So at that time, I just did a nuclear reset, wiped out my entire store by end item, sell similar. And within an hour, sales started to come back, no problem. Okay. And it normalized after that. So now I don't know what I did wrong here. Sometimes I think if I make a video or say something wrong on the live, if eBay's watching, maybe they have somebody that goes in and just zaps my account. I don't know. It's all conspiracy, but you get those thoughts that creep up in the back of your mind. So I did a nuclear reset on Tuesday. It was actually late Tuesday. And I said, you know what? We'll just see what happens on Wednesday. And we'll see. And all the while, Jenna was really taking it easy. She didn't have a lot of things to ship out, like a couple here, a couple there each day. And then here comes Wednesday. Boom, 551. Now, mind you, I did adjust a few prices when I did the end item sell similar. I did adjust a few listings along the way. Most of my listings were adjusted in some way. It took about an hour to do it all. And this is the result. $551 on Wednesday. Wednesdays generally aren't my best days. Thursday, $650. Okay. I don't know what Friday's going to look like, but it's trending back in the right direction. You know, a 3 or 4 day blip. You know what? I can live with it. But I think this is why we need to be in tune with what's going on in our accounts, and don't be afraid to do the end item sell similar process, which we call the nuclear reset, because it's like you're wiping everything out for a period of time. You're not going to have anything for sale on eBay, but then you go in and you revive your ended items through the sell similar process. And I'm a firm believer. And you know what? Don't take my word for it. look at the numbers, the stats, right? Had a huge day on Thursday the 13th, and then things went downhill. It's like a great roller coaster ride. This would be a very fun roller coaster to be on if it were such a roller coaster. So that is what I've been dealing with. And I got to tell you, when I was in this little 3 or 4 day run of just, subpar sales, I got fired up. Okay. I got fired up. And I also went back in and started finding other sources. I did a lot of homework, and I found another source, an old source, and I'm really, really excited about it. And I'm going to be talking about that here very soon. Won't be telling you who it is. Of course, I don't want to share my source with everyone, but I can tell you what it is. And it's liquidation pallets. So stay tuned on this channel. If you enjoyed the content, please hit the like button, consider subscribing to the channel, and of course, hit that notification bell. Programming note, today I'm making this video because we're not going live. I'm going to be out and about with friends that are visiting. Whenever you live in Vegas, you get visitors, and I'm going to be hanging out with them for the next couple days. So this is, unless Jenna decides, hey, I want to go live, which I doubt it. So don't hold your breath. Wrapping your mind around all this stuff that eBay does, especially when they come out with a message like this, trying to figure out if it even pertains to you and if they're going to follow through with what they're saying. Well, it's yet another example of how, at least on eBay, how flipping ain't easy. And I want you guys to have an excellent weekend, and we will talk to you very soon. Take care.